Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Neptune class. So, the Neptune was the workhorse of Earth's Starfleet during the mid 22nd century. Ships were designed for general purposes like defensive duties and so on and so forth. They were originally fitted with spatial torpedoes and plasma cannons with a top cruise speed of a warp 1.5. They had an average travel time between systems of up to several years. The Neptunes would rarely undertake such missions. Uh, they would typically use their interstellar capacity or capability to transit to a given system and then to operate there for a considerable period, conducting local patrols at impulse or low warp speeds. At the end of the mission time frame, the ship would be returned back home at warp speed. Such missions could last as much as 10 years, and with 30-year whole life, as a typical Neptune class vessel might only travel to two or three different systems throughout its lifetime. Like all other human designed ships, the Neptunes were greatly outpaced by the NX class starship, which began to appear in the 2150s. Even so, they continued to operate throughout the 2150s and beyond. The ships were refitted throughout their lives to keep them up to date. They carried phase cannons, and some received photonic torpedoes to their supplement or even replace their spatial torpedoes. The Neptune classes served as part of Earth's defense force after the Zindid attack in 2153. At least one of these ships responded to the trespass of the Klingon bird of prey in the system when the NX-01 returned to Earth in the aftermath of the attack. Okay, so getting on to some of the other information that we have. Alas, we know almost nothing about these ships, and I'm focused to speculate like crazy since the real 24th century Daystrom Institute would certainly know every detail about them. Unlike the Intrepid class, I intend to think of the Neptune as being a pre Warp 5 ship. Mostly, that's just a guess based on the fact that the ship has somewhat more primitive look in the hull than the Intrepid. Human ships of this era should have extremely limited interstellar capability. Remember from Terra Nova that no Earth ship had investigated the colony in the previous 70 years, even though it was only 20 light years away. Even a Warp 1 ship could easily have reached Terra Nova and returned in that time. So we're forced to conclude that even though the ships may have theoretically been able to reach the colony, journeys between star systems were something that Starfleet undertook only rarely. Hence the idea that the Neptunes would use their interstellar capability only rarely. The original armament of the Neptune was likely to be that of a similar tech level of the original NX class, spatial torpedoes, and plasma cannons. It's commonly assumed that the blobs of white light that the NX-01 fired in the pilot episode were plasma bolts, though this is unproven. However, we saw a Neptune class firing phase cannons in The Expanse and again in Twilight. So the ships would presumably have been upgraded at some point. Indeed, the long travel times between the stars would probably mean that individual Neptune classes would vary greatly on how up to date they were. A ship stationed on Earth would more likely receive all the most up to date equipment, while one which was in a distant star system would go many years without such attention. We don't have a conical class name for the ships, nor can I follow the standard site practice of naming them after the first ship of the class seen on screen, since no individual ship has ever been named. The name Neptune class is commonly used by fans, and I have no idea why. All this is from the writers and creators of um, Daystrom Institute's website, which is a great source for a lot of the Star Trek stuff that we kind of come across. So, uh, getting into just the images so we can get that visual here. This is the Neptune that we're talking about, firing a phase cannon, as well as what looks like the bridge section here on board ship. All right, so to Daystrom's website here. This is a human ship pre Starfleet, as we're trying to navigate everything during the Enterprise series era. This is a warship. There's 12 built in total. 2 have been lost. 9 have been retired from service. This was commissioned in 2132 to 2139, remained in service until 2169. We have a length of 127 meters, a beam of 115 meters, a height of 18 meters, and that gives us roughly 4 decks. We have a mass of about 40,000 metric tons and a crew of 35. So a nice small crewed ship, although if you're talking about being on board this ship for some length of time, that may or may not work very well. Just kind of keeping that in mind with a smaller crew. When you do have kind of disagreements on board ship, sometimes it makes bigger waves in a small ship like this. All right, we have 2 phase cannons with a total output of 4 terawatts. We have 2 uh, modified 2 or Model 2 spatial torpedo tubes with about 12 rounds. We also have a light monotanium single hull plus 2 centimeters of polarized armor and a low level structural integrity field. Now, according to Daystrom, their speculation here is we have a normal cruise of warp 1.5. Maximum cruise is going to be 1.5 with a maximum rated at 1.7. Keeping in mind the strength indexes here, a Galaxy class is at a 1,000, but their speculation is our beam firepower is going to be a 0.08. Torpedo firepower is going to be at a 0.2. Weapon range and accuracy is going to be at a 12. Shield strength, we don't have shields on here. It's the whole polarization. Hull armor is going to be a 50.31, and speed is only a 3. Combat maneuverability is 2,600. All right, overall strength index gives them a 19 for a rating for this ship, and a diplomatic capability for that time frame is going to be at a 2. The expected whole life should be roughly about 30 years. I can agree with that a little bit more than some of the other ships that we've had, although I will say, especially when we get to like some of the old berth and all that, I think some of those just lasted a lot longer than they should have because they were or a small crew on board the ship, and they were great science vessels that, although it's not going to be a frontline vessel, especially when it comes to civilians trying to test theories or do other things, it works as a good test bed for that. Um, Going through our refit cycle, we have minor refits, hopefully at every year, a standard, hopefully every year, and major refits every 10 years. So, with that, let's get on over to our D6 and then go from that point. Okay, so let's see what we have here. This is going to be a scout at Starfighter scale. We have a length of 86 meters according to D6 Holocron. Ship size is going to be a 3, cruise 42, so a couple more than what we had listed from Daystrom. Skeleton crew is going to be a 4 with a plus 10 to all skill checks. We do have room for about 2 passengers and cargo capacity of about 3,000 metric tons. We do have enough consumables for figuring for 1 year. We have a warp drive. Standard warp is going to be 1.2. Maximum warp is going to be a 1.8, and max rated is 1.95 at 12 hours. Of course, we're going to have our nav computer. Our maneuverability is going to be listed as a 1D plus 1 and a space speed of 5. We do have a hull strength of 3D plus 2. Our sensor packet comes in with passive scanning out to 1 kilometer at a plus 1. Active scan out to 3 kilometers at a plus 1. A active search out to 6 kilometers at a plus 2. And a focus out to 100 meters at about 1D. Okay, our weapons here. No, they're listing this as having 4 Type 1 plasma cannons, Starfighter scale, fire control is a 0D, rate of fire is 1, and damage is 2D. We also have 3 torpedo launchers, 2 forward and 1 aft. We have fire control is 0D. We have 35 spatial torpedoes total on board ship, spread of 2, and damage of 3D. We also have 2 grapplers for trying to get any shuttles on board. Let's see, we have 3 decks listed here. Your commission is 2141 by Earth Reckoning. We do have 2 shuttle pods on board ship. The Neptune class underwent refit in 2153. For Neptune class ships encountered after 2153, please use the following adjustments. So we have 4 phase cannons with damage being at 4D, still with the same fire rate and same fire control. From D6 Holocron, our description states that the Neptune class starship was a class of United Earth survey ships that were in service with Starfleet about 2141. The Neptune class ships were limited in speed to warp factor 2. This class of ships utilized the same model of captain's chair that would be initially used in the NX class, a newer and more advanced designed starship. And this is all coming from Memory Alpha, the Star Trek Encyclopedia, or Enterprise Sourcebook. I apologize for that, and the Demon Apostle. So that's where they're getting their information from. It's an interesting ship. Another smaller ship, which is really the designs that I really kind of prefer, because having a small group of guys around a table whenever we game, it works really good. Now, when we actually talk about Star Trek and everything else, we've seen, for dealing with the Borg and everything else, a huge drop in crew size, mainly because if we lose ships, we don't want to lose 1,000 people plus per ship. So if we have small crewed ships that can actually be a thorn in the side towards the Borg or other entities out in space, that gets very effective. The only drawback to that is we lose a lot of our science capabilities. So this being a warship as a scout, and then we start seeing some of the other ones, we do lose a little bit of the science availability, but we're kind of multitasking here. We're still having our big survey ships, our big explorer ships, but we're starting to get a bigger group of smaller ships to help manage around star bases, kind of do escort duty and everything else, trying to be there in different fleet sizes so that way we can hopefully keep everyone safe. And when a threat does come through, hopefully we can move what's available, especially when we have a bigger fleet of smaller ships that are available to move over to that threat, hopefully take care of that threat and move on. Same thing that they were trying to do with the Neptune early on in human history. So, with that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next video.